So if you don't know already, unfortunately in early 2020, I was hit by a car on this bike right here. So yeah, actually not the same bike. I ended up getting a crash replacement on the frame. Luckily, the driver who hit me had insurance and I was able to get his information. But it's one of those situations you never really want to find yourself in. Getting hit by a car, it's one of those things that happens and you never think it's going to happen, so you never have the protocol on hand. So I'm going to go into maybe a little bit on what you should do if you are ever to get hit by a car, and also to kind of talk about some updates here on my bike since I got hit. So unfortunately, my super cool complete bike, which came with the gray version of the frame on this 2019 Salsa Warbird, got totaled in the accident. I will speak for the tail fin rack, however, which survived the crash. So around my bottom bracket where I got hit, I had it assessed by a bike shop, and the bike shop took pictures of it and sent it back to Salsa, and Salsa basically deemed the front part of the fork and the bottom bracket combined made it unsafe to ride that frame any longer. The cool news about it is I got this super cool all black frame only version, which is only available in a frame only release of this bike. So I now have the elite version, the frame only version of the frame, and it's a matte black frame. The only thing I don't like about that is this turns into just another black bike. I'm a pretty big fan of black bikes, but my other road bike is pretty much a black color scheme. So now I have two all black bikes, which this is not a big problem. I've heard black makes the bike go faster or something like that, but you know, I don't really buy into that. And but I will admit, it looks pretty slick. It looks a lot more like the open upper frame at a glance, which is kind of cool. People sometimes perceive this for a much more elite bike than it actually is. It looks this nice and pristine for about the first 5 seconds you're on the trail. Then it just gets all covered in dust, and the black really shows the dust. So that's my thoughts about the color. Enough about that though. Again, I'm just another black bike out there. Hashtag just another black bike. Taking a look at the 2020 version of this GRX Warbird, and yeah, it's pretty pink. That's not necessarily my color choice, but it's a lot better, bolder colors than the black and gray. So I think my first dislike in a very short list of dislikes about this bike is actually, unfortunately, the electronic shifting. I thought I was gonna like it a lot more than I actually do. The battery is a pain in the ass. That's probably the biggest drawback of the system. The only way that you could tell if the battery is charged is by pressing this button. Actually, that's the only way you could do it in the stock release, which the other realization I found is this unit does not come stock with Bluetooth, which is a real shame, and they don't really openly talk about that on their website. I really think they need to make that a little bit bigger and maybe some bold text or something, that this does not come with the Bluetooth module. The Bluetooth module is an extra upgrade on top of an already expensive bike. So what that means is it's got these little buttons in the hood. Those buttons basically do nothing in the stock version. And I wasted a bunch of time attempting to try and pair this thing to my bike computer, only to find out, no, you need the Bluetooth module for that. I would highly recommend doing that if you are building one of these, is get the Bluetooth module and also get it while your frame is getting built up, so that they can hide the module somewhere in the frame or the seat tube or something like that. Once you get the Bluetooth, it makes it a lot easier to monitor your battery life, because you can look at your battery life on a bike computer or on your phone or something like that. So I found that I didn't let the battery die as easily once I got the Bluetooth module. That being said, the battery does last a long time, but you really do have to stay on top of charging it. And this is that was the major downside to me, is now this bike, which I'm targeting as more of an off-road bikepacking bike, requires charging. So I'll keep a nice big battery, like a nice high milliamp hour battery in there. And I haven't actually tested if you can charge the module while riding, but that's something I want to try and test. I'm pretty sure you can. another thought about the drivetrain on this bike and just the overall geometry of the frame combined with this front derailleur. For some reason on my first version of this bike, I tended to get a lot of chain drops. I don't know if this is a common thing with DI2, maybe because I kept switching between synchro shift, partial synchro, and these other shifting modes in the DI2, but I got a lot of drop chains. I think in the first month or so I had the bike, I dropped the chain 2 or 3 times, which is rare for me. I've only dropped the chain maybe once or twice on my other bike. So in this version, I actually had my mechanic install a K-edge chain catcher. I think this is a pretty essential piece to just have that extra insurance against frame damage, especially in this somewhat delicate area. I mean, it is pretty overbuilt, I think, in that area though, on the carbon side, so you don't need to worry as much about the frame getting compromised just from chain drops. Get your mechanic to install it. I would only trust like a trusted mechanic to install a chain catcher or a chain guide, because they come really close to the drivetrain and there's a lot of little micro adjustments you need to get right to make sure that that's in the right place. Another dislike I have is more about the wheel set on this bike. The hubs, and this is again like a first world problem kind of a thing. The hubs are so narrow, it makes it really hard to mount a speed meter or like a speed sensor, excuse me, on the hub. I have a Wahoo ecosystem, and the Wahoo speed sensor must be mounted horizontally on your hub or else it won't measure. I learned that the hard way. I tried to mount it vertically and I found out, it wasn't registering it. A weird little minor difference that I noticed on the black only frame set version is they did away with the light mount on the fork. No idea why they did that. The gray version of this frame has a little bolt here for a light mount. It still does have the internal internal routing for a dynamo hub, so you can route the cabling for a dynamo, but for some reason there's no front bolt here. I don't know if they maybe move that back here. I know that this is a fender mount back here, so maybe you can get a bracket to go up front. This is kind of a problem with all these frame sets, is the clearance in the front on the fork is not very, doesn't have a lot of tolerance there. So I can see this in really chunky conditions, and I've already experienced this. Rocks getting kind of wedged in here and really digging and damaging this fork up. I'm not big on frame protection. Salsa did ship this stock with a small bit of frame protection down here, so they must know this part gets pretty battered, but I wish I had a little more clearance here to add some maybe frame tape or something, but it's not a big deal. I mean, who the hell is looking on the inside of your fork there for damage? But yeah, in general, if that's your thing, I've noticed that the paint is pretty delicate on these Warbirds. So on the other one, I only put about 800 miles on the frame. I already had like a bunch of scratches and things. So I will say, could have done with a more durable paint job. I actually think this being black, it won't show the raw carbon as much because underneath it's black carbon. So trying to keep these videos a lot shorter and to the point. I hope you like this video. Again, if you guys got any more questions for me, just let me know in the comments. I know you will. And like, comment, subscribe. I hope you stick around in some upcoming videos. I'm probably going to do some more packing. I'm getting ready for some trips. I hope everyone's staying safe during the COVID-19 scares we have. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting back out on the road, waiting for some parks to open back up so I can maybe pick up where I left off on previous adventures. But anyway, hope everyone's staying safe out there, and get out and ride anytime you can. Peace.